Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Classlise, and I'm Lili. It feels really good to have you here with us today because this episode is something I really needed too. So I'm honestly glad you pressed play.
Hey everyone, I'm Sante, and first of all, thank you for choosing to listen, because just by being here, you're actually helping your ears learn how native speakers talk, and it means a lot. So thank you again, Lili. How are you today?
Sante, I'm honestly glad you asked because this week I noticed my mind was a little bit too negative about small things, like when I forgot my umbrella and it started raining, or when my coffee spilled and somehow I caught myself thinking, wow, why does this always happen to me?
I totally get that. And I have days like that too. Sometimes it's like your mind just wants to focus on what went wrong instead of anything good, and it feels like it's not even your choice sometimes. And that's actually a big part of why I'm excited about our topic today, because positive thinking and self-talk are not just words. They really can change your day in small ways that you don't expect.
Exactly, Sante. And I think a lot of people don't even realize how much their own voice inside their head can make life feel lighter or heavier. And sometimes we talk to ourselves in a way we would never talk to a friend. So today, let's just be real about it and maybe help people notice the little voices in their heads.
That's such a good point, because the way we talk to ourselves really matters. And sometimes I think if I could just talk to myself the way I talk to you or someone I care about, my days would feel so different. And maybe that's something people listening can try too.
You know what that reminds me of? I read somewhere that your brain actually believes what you repeat to it, even if it's just in your mind. So if you say things like, I'm so bad at this, or I can't do anything right, you start to feel like it's true. But if you say, I'm learning, or I'll get better with time, your brain will believe that too.
That's interesting, because I used to always say things like, I can't do math. And guess what? I stayed really bad at math for years, until one day I just decided, okay, maybe I'm not good now, but I can learn. And suddenly, it started to get a little easier.
That's so relatable. And it's kind of funny because sometimes the hardest part is just catching that negative thought in the first place. Like it sneaks in when you're tired or stressed, and then suddenly you're in a bad mood and you don't even know why.
I know what you mean. Sometimes I find myself getting upset over something really small, like losing my keys. And then I realize I'm saying things in my head like, why are you always so careless? And I have to stop myself and say, hey, it's just keys. You're not a bad person because you lost them.
There's something really gentle about being able to notice your own self-talk and just pause for a second. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes you just need to say, okay, that's enough. I can choose to be kind to myself, even if it feels strange at first.
Yeah. And that reminds me, I used to keep a little notebook just to write down things that went well in my day. And at first I thought it was silly, but after a week or so, I started noticing more good things happening, not because the world changed, but because my mind was looking for them.
I like that idea, and actually, I've tried something similar. I started leaving small notes for myself, like on the mirror or on my phone, and they just said simple things like, you did your best today, or remember to breathe, and it made those difficult mornings a bit softer.
That sounds so nice, and it's amazing how a tiny change, like a note on your mirror, can help you remember to be gentle with yourself. And I think the more we practice this, the more natural it feels, even if it's awkward at first.
It really is about practice, and I think people sometimes expect positive thinking to be a big magical thing. Like you wake up one day and suddenly all your thoughts are happy, but it's actually more like training a puppy. It takes patience and a lot of repetition, and some days are easier than others.
That's true. And sometimes positive thinking gets a bad reputation. Like people think it means ignoring your problems or pretending to be happy when you're not. But I think real positive thinking is more about being honest with yourself and choosing a softer way to see things.
That's such an important point, because if you just force yourself to smile and ignore your feelings, it doesn't help at all. But if you say to yourself, okay, I'm having a hard day, but I can still find something good, or I can still be kind to myself, that's when it starts to feel real.
Exactly. And I think everyone listening has probably had a moment where their own words made a difference. Maybe it was a day when you were nervous about something and you told yourself you could do it. Or you reminded yourself of a time when things worked out and that tiny voice helped you try.
I remember before my first job interview, I was so nervous and my hands were shaking. And for some reason, I kept repeating to myself, you've prepared for this. You've done hard things before. Just breathe. And that tiny bit of self-talk made the waiting room a little less scary.
That's such a good story because everyone thinks confidence is something you're born with, but sometimes it's just the result of repeating small, kind things to yourself, even when you don't feel strong at all.
You know, it's interesting how the words we say inside our minds can be a comfort or a storm. And sometimes you don't even notice which one it is until you stop and listen.
Yeah, and sometimes the way you talk to yourself comes from what you've heard growing up. Maybe people told you you weren't good at something, or you heard people being hard on themselves, and you picked it up without thinking about it.
That's so true. And sometimes breaking that pattern means making a new habit on purpose, like deciding today I'm going to be my own friend, even if my mind tries to pull me back into old habits.
And it's okay if it feels strange at first. I think when you try to change the way you talk to yourself, your brain will fight back a little bit at first because it's so used to the old way, but with time, it really does get easier.
Sometimes I still have days when the negative self-talk feels so loud, and I have to remind myself that thoughts are not always facts. Just because my mind says something doesn't make it true.
That's really important, and I wish more people knew that, because your mind can be a storyteller, and not every story it tells is true. Sometimes it's just a habit or an old tape playing, and you get to decide if you want to listen or not.
You know, that makes me think of those days when you wake up already in a bad mood. Maybe it's raining or you just feel heavy. And if you catch your thoughts early, you can say something like, today might be hard, but I'm still going to find a small moment of peace.
And sometimes that small moment is just having a cup of tea, or listening to your favorite song, or calling a friend. It doesn't have to be something big. It's more about the way you let yourself have those moments.
I love that. And I think sometimes people wait for something big to change their mood, but it's the little things that build up and make you feel better over time, even if it's just giving yourself a break when you need one.
I agree. And actually, I used to feel guilty about taking breaks because I thought I should always be productive. But now I realize even resting can be positive thinking, because you're telling yourself you matter enough to rest.
That's so gentle, and I think our world is sometimes too focused on doing more and more. But positive self-talk can be as simple as saying, it's okay to take a breath. It's okay to just be for a moment.
Yeah, and sometimes the most positive thing you can do is forgive yourself for not being perfect. And I think people need to hear that more often because nobody has it all together all the time.
You know, I think a lot of people believe that being positive means you never feel sad or angry, but it's really more about letting those feelings come and then choosing not to let them take over everything.
That reminds me of a friend who always says it's okay to visit sad town, but you don't have to build a house there. And I think that's a really soft way to remember that feelings pass.
I love that phrase, and it's true, because some days you're just visiting, and the next day you feel lighter. And maybe your self-talk helps you remember that nothing lasts forever, not even a bad mood.
And sometimes just sharing your thoughts with someone else helps too. Like when you're stuck in your own head and you tell a friend, and they say something gentle, and suddenly your whole day feels softer.
I've had days like that when I was sure everything was going wrong, but then a friend said something kind, and it was like I could breathe again. And sometimes you have to be that friend for yourself.
Yes, and I think that's the magic of self-talk. It's like having a small friend inside your mind who can remind you that you're trying your best. And that's enough.
Sometimes I even talk to myself out loud when nobody's around. Like if I'm nervous before something important, I'll just say, "You can do this, Lili. Just try your best." And somehow it helps more than you'd think.
I do that too, especially when I'm about to do something I'm scared of. Sometimes I'll even make a silly face in the mirror and tell myself it's okay to feel nervous. It makes the moment a bit lighter.
I think we forget that we're allowed to be kind to ourselves that way. And maybe it feels strange at first, but it can really change how you see yourself over time.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes your self-talk is a little messy or uncertain, but it's still better than being your own worst critic all the time.
That's true. And maybe one of the best things you can do is just notice when your mind is being hard on you and decide to speak back with something a little softer.
Sometimes when I notice I'm being negative, I ask myself, would I say this to a friend? And if the answer is no, then I try to change it to something more supportive.
That's a good trick, and I think everyone listening can try that. If you wouldn't say it to someone you care about, maybe it doesn't belong in your own mind either.
Sometimes we need reminders like that, because old habits are strong and your mind likes to repeat what it already knows. But with practice, you can create new ways of thinking that help you feel lighter.
I think it's important to remember that positive thinking isn't about ignoring problems. It's about finding a better way to deal with them and giving yourself hope, even when things are tough.
And hope is such a gentle thing sometimes. It's just a small light at the end of a long day. And positive self-talk can help you find that light even when everything else feels dark.
I used to think I had to fix everything by myself, but now I see that just talking kindly to myself is sometimes enough to get through a rough moment.
And I think everyone listening probably needs to hear that. It's okay to have hard days. It's okay to not be perfect. And it's okay to give yourself a little bit of kindness.
Maybe that's the secret to positive thinking. It's not about changing everything outside. It's about changing the way you treat yourself inside.
And if you start there, even small changes can make a big difference over time. Sometimes you won't notice right away, but after a while, you'll look back and see how far you've come.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And for everyone listening, just remember, it's a journey, and you don't have to get it right all the time. Small steps are still steps.
That's right. And maybe today, the most positive thing you can do is just say one nice thing to yourself, even if it's as simple as "I made it through today."
Or even just, "I tried my best," and that's enough, because sometimes that's all we need to hear.
And sometimes the best part about positive thinking is that it makes you notice the good things more even on a day that didn't go as planned.
I think that's a good note to end on, because every day brings something different, and your self-talk can help you see the good in the small things.
So before we finish, Lili, do you have a favorite phrase or self-talk line you like to use when things get tough?
I think the one I use most is just, "This too shall pass." It reminds me that whatever I'm feeling won't last forever, and I can get through it.
I love that mine is usually "I am enough as I am," because sometimes I forget that it's okay to be just me and not have everything figured out.
I think those are both good reminders. And for everyone listening, maybe you can find a phrase that feels right for you and keep it close for when you need it.
We're so glad you spent this time with us today, and we hope you feel a little lighter, or at least a little more gentle with yourself.
Remember, you're not alone in this, and every small step towards positive thinking counts, even if it doesn't feel big right now.
You're listening to Classlise, where your ears lead your fluency.
Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
Take care of yourself, and keep being kind to your mind every day.
Goodbye, everyone, and have a gentle day ahead.